actually, we're going to talk about Comic-Con. There's a lot of news that came out of Comic-Con, a lot of exciting upcoming movies that they previewed there. But I thought that this might be fun. I got to tell you, this article that I read earlier today, it's one of the greatest ever.
oh God, what is it?
I love this article. So apparently, Anne Hathaway was on Jimmy Fallon the other night.
Oh yeah.
She was talking about Christopher Nolan, and she kind of let it slip that Christopher Nolan, one of his favorite movies is MacGruber.
Okay.
Ooh.
That he would start quoting MacGruber, and he'd start laughing like hysterically on the on the set with MacGruber.
Great minds think alike.
I know. So they put out a list of like other, higher brow directors, and the kind of disreputable movies that they loved on this website. And I love a couple of these picks, and one of them made me laugh out loud. But the first one is kind of, it's predictable. Anyone that knows Tarantino knows that his tastes range greatly. But they chose for Tarantino's pick of the best of, I think it was 2010. I think it was that year. Was Anything Else, or maybe earlier than that. But he chose Anything Else as one of his top 20 of the year,
right.
The year that was released, which is definitely a lesser Woody Allen. I think we'd all agree.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, that was crazy when he picked that. Yeah.
Then you have Terrence Malick, who apparently loves Zoolander.
Wow.
Now, when I read these off, when I read these earlier today, I was just picturing these directors sitting in their living room watching these movies and laughing hysterically. I think that's great. And I think you can see that influenced in his work. Polanski, obviously Polanski likes Rush Hour. He has a big thing for Brett Ratner. Martin Scorsese loves The Exorcist II, The Heretic.
Wow. That's wow, okay. I didn't know that. Wow.
You know what? I have never seen it, and I TiVoed it the other night, so I'm going to watch it tonight because I'm anxious to see something that loony. But the funniest thing was I read an interview years and years ago with Scorsese, and he was talking about all the movies that he loves, and he said, I just saw that movie, Who's the Man? And I thought it was great. Remember that movie? It was like...
Is it the one with Dennis Leary and the guys from MTV Raps? Is that the one?
Yes, I think that's it, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Stanley Kubrick, when he made his list in 1963 of, like, films that are among his favorites, he included stuff by Fellini and Antonioni. After he died, I guess his daughter did a speaking engagement, and they asked him about movies that he loved. And she said, you know what movie he really loved? My father, Stanley Kubrick, White Men Can't Jump.
Wow.
That's great. And
I
this
can't
is the
even
best.
picture that.
I know.
I cannot. I don't know if I could be. But I like that movie. But I can't. I don't know if I could really. Wow. Okay. That's great though. This is really good though because it lets us know what they like.
The last one, and this is my favorite one, Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh God.
Super sour Alfred Hitchcock. Very studious. He rarely cracks a smile. Droll in the extreme. He's the definition of droll. What was one of his favorite movies? Well, of course, Smokey and the Bandit.
Good for him.
That's great. He also liked Benji. Okay, I just had to open the show with that because I thought that was just a really delicious article. That was.
That's great. That's awesome.
Are there any movies that you guys like? Well, I guess you classify them as guilty pleasures. Do you think that guilty pleasures is a fair assessment, or do you just like what you like? I mean, guilty pleasures kind of assumes that there should be reason to be ashamed of liking it.
Yeah. I think that guilty pleasures, like MacGruber, for instance, I'm a huge fan of that movie, and other people would classify it as guilty pleasure, but I literally think it's a fucking funny movie.
Yeah,
like,
no,
I think
agree
it's
with
like
you, Chris. Yeah.
Hilariously well written and really memorable lines. It's just that most people just sort of watched it once and then gave up on it. You got to watch it once, and then you got to watch it again with a couple glasses of wine in you, and then watch it again with a couple glasses of wine in you. And it's a really funny movie. It truly is. I mean, it's very quotable. So I don't think I have that many guilty pleasures. Probably have more musical guilty pleasures than I do movies. But I can't think of any.
It's interesting you bring this up because Keith on our show has said there's no such thing as guilt. He doesn't believe in guilty pleasures. So you like what you like. And then I'm sure we're going to get into this later, so I might as well bring this out in the forefront right now. There's Del Toro, and he was interviewed. He's been interviewed all over the place at Comic-Con, and he said one of his influences for the Pacific Rim is the Japanese monster movies. And the guy said, and this is in Huffington Post, I said, it corrected him, you mean guilty pleasures? He goes, no, I really love those movies. And, I have to agree. Those if I had guilty pleasures, I mean, those would definitely be my guilty pleasures.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, they're also, you could imagine Del Toro being extremely influenced and inspired by those movies as a youngster. I mean, there are movies like that.
Yeah.
But then there are movies like Alfred Hitchcock at 80 years old loving Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally see that. And I mean, but, it's hard to say because, that's another thing I've noticed lately, and maybe you guys can correct me, but do we even have guilty pleasures anymore because there's so much out there and there's so much, I mean, I guess if I said the hottie and the naughty, which I've never seen, but I guess if I said that, then I even know what that is, but I mean, that I can remember what that is, I mean, but it's so hard in this day and age, but it is kind of funny though, you think Alfred Hitchcock sitting back in the screening room watching Smokey and the Bandit.
No, I hear Hottie and the Naughty. Hottie and the Naughty is one of James Ivory's favorite movies.
I think it's true. Godzilla is probably a good example. Guilty pleasure means that it really is shit, but you like watching it anyway.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not saying that all Godzilla movies are shit, but obviously it's a rubber lizard, and like if it doesn't look convincing at all, but people love those movies anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's a lot of movies like that anymore. Maybe Ed Wood and that kind of stuff, or maybe bad 80s movies that are guilty pleasures.
Yeah.
There's a lot of 80s horror, like Tales from Night of the Creeps and stuff like that.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, that stuff is guilty pleasures for me, maybe.
Yeah, I think the 80s might be the last decade, and maybe the early 90s where you have that, and then I think it just becomes, because there's so much out there, it's becoming harder and harder to classify.
Or what about the sci-fi movies, the like shark
those
and
total
things like that?
You're absolutely right, Chris. Absolutely right.
I mean, those are ridiculous, but they are fun to watch.
Yeah.
Obviously, like Cobra is mine, and I mean there are movies that you readily admit are awful, but there's a feeling that you get from them. That you can't fabricate the ego and all that stuff that went into making Cobra, and that's what I like about the experience of watching Cobra more than anything. It's such a feeling of that period of superstar action, male ego driven to ridiculousness, and coming out with product that's completely laughably bad. I just love that about it.